Hey everyone! Welcome back once again to another wonderfully fantastic, epic, uh, in a not galaxy far away, but in a galaxy right here. We are here with all the shows, the epic episodic weekly podcast where we tell you how we feel about, well, all the shows. And I'm here with the wonderful co-host of over 25 years.
I'm David.
And I'm Sterling, and we're really excited to be here with you. It's
Yes.
going to be a real journey and adventure today. Um, and before we begin, I just want to extend my personal apologies to you at home, the audience, for us being delayed a week. Unfortunately, I was a little under the weather, and in a effort to avoid spreading the overcast in the podcast, and have a very monotone voice and sound like this when I'm sick. Yeah, I didn't want to burden y'all with that. So instead, I rested that week. But we are back and we are going to be as better than ever because we're going to be talking about, yes, and we're going to be talking about Andor, specifically season two. We didn't get to start our podcast series when Andor season two came out, but it's pretty close to when it did, a couple months ago. So we wanted to.
Nominated
Uh,
for a bunch of awards too.
Yes, it's been getting a lot of buzz recently for a lot of good reasons. We're going to talk about that. This episode is our thoughts and feelings on Andor season, somewhat season one, but mostly season two. Um, but first of all, how you doing? How you been, Dad? What's happening?
I'm doing good. I had a great little trip up the California coast where I got to visit my friend who lives in a small town called Arroyo Grande that's on the California coast, and it's just magnificent scenery there. Panoramic ocean views and rolling hills and lots of fresh produce, and they have technology there, so that was fun. And something related to our show, I went across town to a local museum called the Skirball Center, and they had this wonderful exhibition of original art, original drawings, including the original comic book pages of Jack Kirby. This is the
Wow.
Kirby of Lee Kirby, who did much of the heavy lifting in creating the entire Marvel universe, and the visual style that Kirby developed is highly influential, not just in the MCU, but in other shows too. For example, uh, there was a kind of espionage thriller that won a bunch of awards a few years ago called Argo, and Argo actually featured original art by Jack Kirby that played a role in the story.
Wow, that's super cool. I didn't even know that. I thought it was based on a fake movie production
It was
only,
a
but there's some real.
Yes, one of the people that they hired to design this futuristic looking movie was Jack Kirby. And that really happened. And that was one of the things that you got to see at the exhibit was one of the drawings that Kirby did, conceptual art for the movie that was going to be called Argo. But it turned out that it wasn't actually a movie. It was actually a super secret spy mission
Wow, yeah.
in real
It's an
life.
amazing, incredible story. Although, of course, every movie production takes liberties, I highly recommend that you guys go and see that movie just as a simple way to inspire you to actually look at the real story of um, I don't know how you would describe it, but basically the rescuing of multiple people while the Iranian Revolution was happening. And you can take out the politics of it mostly and focus on the real human struggle that happened there of trying to sneak your way in and the intensity of trying to sneak your way back out. Actually pretty funny you mentioned that because that I think is a perfect sort of segue into Andor and sort of the spy thriller that this is, except one was in real life and the other's in a galaxy far, far away. But that sounds like a lot of fun. And so, yeah. Um,
Yes. And if they don't have a Kirby exhibit near you, then talk to your local museum board and say, we want Jack Kirby show. It's great. And they'll make money from it because people will go.
yeah, I'll post some pictures here that my pops was able to take of the um, museum and some of the things. But yeah, it's really a blast from the past. Good thing to check out if it's in your area, and if it's not, hey, it doesn't hurt to ask, right? The worst that could happen is they say no. On my end, like I said, partially was recovering, but partially I took a trip to Grass Valley, California. And Dad, when we talk about where we come from in Long Beach, California, you love to say, you come from what you like to call Kansas of the West. But I tell you, Grass Valley really does like that does feel like Kansas of the West. It's very open plains and small town vibe in the heart of California. And as it just so happens, it's about an hour or so drive from Sacramento. And so the real only airport that you could get to Grass Valley from is to Sacramento. So I actually interned for our local assemblyman, who was Patrick O'Donnell. And this was a long time ago, back in high school, years ago, almost 10 years at this point. And as I was traveling, realizing, wait a minute, we're flying into Sacramento. I had never been to the capital, even though I'd interned for my local assemblyman. And for those that don't know, your local assemblyman represents you in the California state legislature, which helps govern the state and decide on laws and stuff like that. But I had never actually been in the capital. I had only been at the district office. And one thing leads to another. And I spoke to the people that are representing that district now, that represents us in Long Beach. And they were kind enough and gracious enough to give us a tour of the state capitol, where we got to view a lot of things there and the history of the California State Assembly and how it was built. And so, fun fact, basically, the reason that we have Sacramento as our capital and not say San Francisco is because basically there was a bidding war between some of the cities that were nearby, and there were different problems that came up. I forget what each of them specifically were, but basically there were logistical issues with each city. But Sacramento was the one of the only cities that not only was capable of housing all of these legislators back in the 1800s to come out, but they also were connected through the river that goes to San Francisco, one of the biggest ports. It was a big port back then. It's a huge port nowadays as well. And so Sacramento was the place that could house everybody and also had quick access to the sea. So it all just kind of worked out. And so nowadays people think of Los Angeles or San Francisco as the capital, but Sacramento is the actual capital. So
Yes.
um, if you happen to be in the capital city of your state, or if you happen to be in Washington, D.C., feel free to call your state representative, look up who your state representative is, give them a call, and usually they'll be very nice. They'll give you something. And if you say, hey, I'm a constituent of your district, whether it's Congress or your state legislature, they'll usually do something nice for you. So, be sure to do that when you can as well. Um, and
Yes.
Yeah, it was a nice trip. Got to see a lot of beautiful things in nature, and so really excited. But in the meantime, one of the things that I did on my trip, like most people do, is you download a few shows and you try and see, hey, uh, what can I do to pass the time as the plane travel goes on? And the show that I chose was Andor season 2. Um, now, going into Andor season 2, I was really excited because I loved Andor season 1. I thought Andor season 1 was a really good um, piece that was being developed by the folks at the Lucasfilm production and Disney. I thought Mandalorian was good as well, but there were some misses. There were definitely some misses, and Andor was not one of them. Andor was definitely a hit, and that clearly shows with how much money they sunk into this. And we'll probably talk about that in the inside baseball section. But um, just a lot of enjoyment from this, and I think that's because this was a fresh look at the Star Wars universe. Sort of the low key. You're not in this super high fantasy, super high you know um we're not looking at the stars of the show here like the Skywalker dynasty or Jedi versus Sith. This is looking at the untold stories. And For those who don't know, Andor is the namesake for Cassian Andor, which was a main character in Rogue One, a Star Wars story. But Cassian Andor himself was a low key character who was sort of a spy that was away from the big players of the game. But uh, This was a movie. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, was a movie based on how the Rebel Alliance was able to capture the plans for the Death Star. And we'll avoid spoilers and all that stuff here because we're not in the spoiler section. But the point is
But it was
that
a good movie, and it was such a
yes,
good movie that people wanted to have more of those characters.
yes,
So the only way they could have more of those characters was to do a prequel, because the sequel to Andor is Star Wars Episode.
Seven, A Force Awakens. Yes.
No, no, no.
Oh, no, 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 no. You're right. You're right. Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. Sorry.
Yeah, the
Yes, you're
first
right.
Star Wars movie, which is numbered four, just to keep things interesting. So this had to be a prequel because all the characters, well, okay, they couldn't go into the Star Wars, original trilogy timeline, so they went backwards in time, and that's actually kind of interesting because it shows the first few years of the Rebel Alliance. How did the Rebel Alliance get started? And that might not sound like it would be as entertaining, but it turns out that it is, because instead of focusing on, force wielding lords and all that kind of stuff, it's about the regular people and the uh, kind of workaday management of the empire, and how that actually looks day to day, and how people were being oppressed by the empire and they weren't going to stand for it. And while it's true that Luke Skywalker and the other force wielders played a really important role, the way that the evil empire was defeated was by the Rebel Alliance giant space fleet. And this is how that came to be. Uh, and it kind of starts out in a small town on a small planet. But hey, that's kind of how the original Star Wars started, right?
Yep. We started on, you could say Tatooine Episode
Hmm.
1, Tatooine Episode 4 as well. Um, and so uh, they really try to um, uh, bring us back to basics, I guess you could say, with Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. But then, there was just so much, I guess, criticism of the newest iteration of the Star Wars sequels. Star Wars Episode 7, 8, and 9. And Rogue One was one of the few of those movies that came out that audiences seemed to love. It got a 7.8 out of 10 on IMDb. It got around 84%, I believe, on Rotten Tomatoes so audiences really did like it, but they were wanting for more. They really were excited about it. And so, of course, they had to give the people what they want, and they gave us Andor season 1. So, I mean, I personally liked Rogue One: A Star Wars Story. I liked what they tried to do to be creative with the fact that you can't just bring in the big heavy hitters. And so, to get a whole TV show about that would be really interesting. What I was also excited about was, as you said, delving into the mid-level management of the empire and explaining that bureaucracy in fascism can actually be very scary if you explain it correctly and you describe what that would look like. Because it's not going to be, fascism and the evils of the empire will not be in your face. Conspiracies to snuff out peace and tranquility. It's going to be also figuring out where the rebels are and how they're, going to intercept them, how they're going to counter the counterinsurgency activities, and also just the daily life of what the empire is like, and not just in the outskirts, but also at the heart of it in Coruscant. And so that's what season one uh, gave us as an opportunity, was to sort of explore those ideas more. Um,
Yes,
now, but
a
yeah.
very different feel in some ways than a lot of Star Wars. It was much more like a spy thriller where people were having like secret meetings and out of the way places, and they had to go on missions where they didn't really quite understand what they were doing, and it wasn't the epic space battle kind of thing. It was much more uh like you'd see in an espionage movie, and it was really well done. And how well done was it? Well, it was done approximately as well as uh, Tony Gilroy, who was the showrunner's other spy shows. What were his other spy shows? He was the writer for the Bourne trilogy.
Wow, what a great person to hire, huh? I mean, one of the most successful spy thrillers, or well, I believe it was based on a novel, but it was the first time that Bourne had been brought to the big screen. And I tell you, Bourne Identity is one of the best spy movies I think of all time. Definitely, I mean, is it the best movie of all time? Probably not, but pretty good. And so bringing that guy in, perfect choice.
Yes, exactly. But he clearly knows Star Wars, and he had, the team around him that helped with the writing and the production design and all the other elements. So it looks like Star Wars, and it feels like Star Wars, but it also feels like an espionage thriller. And the the big difference between the first season and the second season, which just finished a few weeks ago, for me, is that it went from focusing mostly on things that were kind of local on these more peripheral planets like Ferrex, and it started to go more into what's happening on Coruscant, the uh, uh, planet where the evil emperor and Darth Vader and all that, have their headquarters. So the second season also brought in like the Council of Planets and things that we've seen in other episodes. So the second season felt to me even more like Star Wars. And I felt also, well, I could just see that the production values were just stunning. I mean, these are some of the most beautiful sets and costumes and stunning visual effects that I've seen any place, not just on a TV show, but anywhere. Some of this is just beautiful. And th there are scenes where they're in these huge government buildings that have all these people running around and all this alternate reality Star Wars technology, and they built those. They spent millions and
Yes.
millions of dollars, and they actually built them so the actors would be running around in a real place.
And they do so many other things too. And I'm sure we'll go into detail in the inside baseball section. But I mean, even to the languages, the people don't realize this, but they have staff, and we've gotten a chance to ask a question to them and see them in person for a screening of Mandalorian. But the Mandalorian language that was created, and the Gorman language that we see in season 2 of Andor, that was created. So really, you can tell that this is an all hands on deck affair. And I can concur with everything that you said. Visually stunning, and music was really good. Hard to compete with John Williams, but they tried, and this was pretty good.
Well,
But
yes and
yeah,
no. I mean, it was Nicholas Britell and Brandon Roberts who were the composers, and they're British composers, which kind of makes sense because Star Wars tends to have a lot of their productions done in Britain. And Nicholas Britell is probably best known for being the composer on Succession, if you ever
yes.
saw that hit series.
Yeah. And so switching gears to season 1 just a tad bit, I think that what season 1 did so well was they did an excellent job on character development. They create a lot of plots that set you up to not be excited about the galactic battle that's being built up as much, although that is a part of it. You're actually more invested in the people involved on both sides. And you can tell that they tried really hard to make everyone empathetic, even the bad guys. So I really enjoyed it. Um, and they really try and get you
They're not
invested.
the top level super evil bad guys. Some of these people don't even realize that what they're doing is causing a lot of harm, and that
Correct.
actually one of the storylines is one of the characters thinks that the Empire is trying to save these people, and then he gradually discovers evidence outside of his office, outside of his little bubble, that no, the Empire is actually trying to destroy them.
Yeah. So it's set up in season 1, and then we learn it later in season 2. So I'll tell you this. Season 1, my favorite episode that I feel encapsulated that was season 1, episode 6, The Eye. This is the episode where they take a lot of inspiration from the older episodes of Star Wars, 4, 5, and 6, where this is a heist. They're trying to steal from the Empire in this one. And I won't spoil too much because, again, the spoiler free section. But yeah, it's just each character, they manage to develop pretty well. Obviously, some more than others. So some have more screen time than others. But um, they develop them through action and through the things that they do. And you are not only excited about that, but you're excited about, wow, this is a really cool plan. This is a cool plan that they're putting together, and there's so much intensity involved. You have a real feeling of stress, and you're feeling on the edge of your seat. And I feel like um, if you were to encapsulate Andor season 1 with any episode, I would probably choose season 1 episode 6. And so individually, I would probably rate that a 9 out of 10. And But series wide, if you take it all together, I think I'm at an 8 out of 10. Andor season 1 did a lot of good things. There's room for improvement with some things, but I mean, one of the greatest Star Wars TV shows of all time. That's for sure.
Yes, I will say that about the second season. That it's one of the great Star Wars shows, TV or video game or theatrical. And it's one of the best made shows on TV. And I hope that the TV Academy shows them some love when the Emmys come up in a couple of weeks, because, like I said, that's some of the best, most beautiful production design and uh, visual effects that I've ever seen. And I don't want the show to be about, uh, too much of the inside baseball, but the budget for the two seasons was $650 million. So one of the reasons that it looks so good is that they spent a ridiculously huge amount to, yeah, I mean, way more than you'd spend on a movie. In other words, if you were
Yeah,
going to do a
that's.
Star Wars movie, you would not spend $600 million. It would be much less than that.
Do you have on hand how much they spent Rogue One? Because there's no way it was 650 million. I
Well,
don't
I'm
believe it
guessing
was
that was
that
probably a
much.
$150 million movie.
Yeah. So that is just very telling. And so I think that uh, when you consider that, oh yeah, so I just looked it up. The estimated budget was somewhere approximately to $280 million for the Rogue One movie. So
Wow, that's really expensive.
yeah, I mean that's even more than what
That's,
you estimated, and that's still you know way less than what they spent on this. So I do hope it gets some love as well, at least
oh, that
visually. Come
movie
on,
costs
no.
that much money? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Were making a Star Wars movie, and they wanted this to be a big one. And then
Well,
a
it's
lot of
okay. They
different
said
factors.
200 to 280 million. I mean, uh, I'd say 200 million is probably closer to it, but who knows? Because sometimes, especially if they think that they're going to have a big hit, they will go back and spend a lot of money to fix little parts of the movie that might appeal to a wider audience or take out things that might alienate certain audiences to try and make it as big a hit as it can possibly be.
Hmm. So speaking of going back to season one, what would you say was your favorite episode from season one that sort of encapsulates that all the things that you talked about, as far as your favorite parts?
Wow, that's a little bit of a tricky question because I'm going to be straight with you guys. I could not make it through season one, and I decided
Mm.
I would give season two a try. And it was like I had walked on to a completely alternate world where now suddenly this was one of the best shows on TV.
Okay, all right. I got it. Okay. But like I think that's good that that second season was created and not just left in the wind, cuz sometimes that's what shows do. They'll do one season and then they'll just give up. But they didn't, and they really did well on the second one. So, okay. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
I don't know all the story about this, but my impression is that they were probably planning on this being a two-season show. Uh,
Yes, that's my understanding. That basically, they didn't want to spend too much more money than they already did, so they said that they'll just start it and end it and complete it with that. So that's what they did with this, and I think it was a good decision based on how everything concluded and everything. But we'll talk about that in spoilers. So,
yeah,
so
I think
let me
all the
ask you this then.
episodes together told that story really well. And that's one of the things about TV shows is that um, when you have a hit, that's a rare and special thing. Most shows do not go beyond one season. And we tend to, as people in the audience, not be aware of how many shows get canceled because we're only watching a small fraction of all the shows, right? It's like every year there's somewhere between 500 and 1,000 TV shows.
Yep.
Okay, that's 500 and 1,000 shows. And each of them, if they have, let's say 10 episodes, that wouldn't be a lot of episodes, right? But that would be like 10,000 episodes. Nobody can keep track of all that. So uh, most shows don't get beyond the first season, and they're lucky to get a second season. So if a show gets to, 3 or 4 seasons, there's a feeling like, wow, we have this once in a lifetime opportunity. Our show, they like it enough to keep renewing it. So let's renew it forever.
Indeed. So I definitely can appreciate the fact that even though people might offhandedly say, "Oh, it only got 2 seasons," that, with everything considered, I think that's pretty good. All right, let me ask you this then. What would you say, cuz I think again, season 1 is like a good setup to season 2. So
Yes.
connecting the two, what would you say was your favorite either plot line or character development that you were looking forward to learning more about in season 2? And then we can get into it in the spoiler section, the details of it, but what would you
Well,
say was like
of course, learning more about Cassian Andor, and then I wanted to find out more about the Stellan Skarsgård, Luthen Rail character. He seemed kind of interesting. Uh, but I really kind of went into the season 2 with an open mind because I uh, didn't know enough about the first season to push me one way or another towards individual characters. So I really didn't. Uh, so what I liked about the show was what I saw in the second season. So I wasn't going into it because I wanted more of season 1. I was hoping it was going to be different. And for me, it was.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I think that's fair enough. Um yeah, I think my end of things was that again, I was really intrigued by all these characters, and in particular, I was intrigued by Cyril and Deidre. This was the evil power couple, the bad guy
Oh,
powerhouse of one of the characters who was more on the bureaucratic end, and then we had a spy who was working for the Imperials. Cyril as a more bureaucrat, and then we have um, Deidre, who's a member of the Imperial Security Bureau, the ISB. So they're bad guys, but there's something about their um, persistence and their will to try and support the Empire and find the rebels where they're hiding. That converges to them being eventually intertwined. And I just was really excited about how that was going to develop in season 2. So uh, I think
yes.
that it was good that we got a focus on the Empire. But now it's time for us to focus on Andor season 2. So this is going to be the spoiler-free section, where we're just going to talk about the generalness of the season, and then we'll talk about the nitty-gritty in a moment. So season 2, we basically start with um, uh, uh, things are not looking great for the rebels. The Empire is basically winning right now. This is kind of the height of the Empire's success. This is about a few years before the Battle of Yavin, where and so now we're seeing freedoms more and more oppressed. But it kind of goes deeper than that. You have the Empire uh, doing what Emperor Palpatine does best, which is sowing the seeds of disorder so that he can crush it and sort of come in and be the hero of the story. As we may remember, Order 66 and basically casting the Jedi away was the master plan of the Emperor and the Empire as a whole. And so they're trying to kind of run that story back again here. They're trying to create this bad guy for the Empire and for the Galactic Empire as a whole. And so uh, we're seeing Cassian, we're seeing Luther, we're seeing Mon Mothma as well, especially. Mon
Yes.
Mothma got a huge focus on this one. Um, and they are all finding ways to try and defeat the Empire, but the Empire is also finding ways to sort of subvert their. With how big and expansive the Empire is, the Empire can find a way to sort of subvert everyone, whether it's the physical combat, whether it's the propaganda, whatever it is. They're finding ways to try and win. So, all interesting stuff to pay attention to.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. It, but it makes this all very entertaining. So even though we're looking at the behind the scenes of how the Empire actually does all their dirty work, it's done in an entertaining way. And there's even a couple of characters that flip. I won't spoil that, but there's one human and one non-human character who starts working for the Empire, and then they change sides, which is very good.
Yeah. But also, importantly, there are some on the good guys that flip as well. Everyone's switching their allegiances, and it really feels like the theme of this season was sacrifice. Everyone is sacrificing something, and others are not as willing to do that. They're all being challenged, and some succeed, some fail, and it's up to you as an audience to be along for that ride. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what you said, the like bureaucracy and like how that's portrayed here. Because a lot of the criticism that we got from the prequel series, episodes 1, 2, and 3, is that we do get so much more of a focus on that compared to episodes 4, 5, and 6, but that wasn't as well received. Why do you think that was? Why do you think that what we get in Andor tells that so much better?
Well, I was a fan of episode one, two, and three, although not as big a fan of episode two. But I actually thought, and still do, think that those are excellent sci-fi fantasy action movies that are as good as the others. And I've never
Ooh,
changed my
that's gonna be controversial. The Star Wars fans, they gonna get some pitchforks. Better watch out, or some lightsabers. Better watch out.
Yeah, no, I mean,
But
it's like I liked the pod race. I thought the pod race was cool. And I thought that the battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan was one of the best action sequences in all of Star Wars.
yeah, I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that that's pretty clear at this point.
Well,
If you,
these are movies that are like from, 20 years ago,
yeah,
so
if you
probably
don't if you don't know that already, then sorry to
it,
say. But
it,
anyway,
it won't spoil it to see it again because you've to see it
yeah,
now because they really are worth seeing if you just go in and say, okay, I want to watch a Star Wars movie that isn't the same as all the other ones. And I think that's the reason why they didn't do as well at the box office, because people wanted George to make, Star Wars episode 6.5 and 6.6 and 6.7.
sure,
They
of
wanted
course.
it, or Star Wars 4.5. It's like they didn't really want
Mm.
to continue the story. They just wanted more of what they already liked.
Well, let me also say, in fairness, that one of the huge criticisms of George Lucas is his script writing. Even Mark Hamill himself has said multiple times that he was very frustrated with the dialogue that was given to him. And so we know George Lucas is a genius. He's got 4 billion reasons to justify it, right? So we don't need to, say that he is good or bad per se. But what I am saying is that I would argue that when we focused on the Senate and what was going on geopolitically in the galaxy, in episodes 1, 2, and 3, I think that um, was a turnoff for audiences. It kind of made them wonder, what kind of movie am I watching here? Is this really Star Wars? Like you said, I was kind of expecting 6.5, 6.6, but I mean, can we agree at least that the dialogue was not perfect, was not where it could have been.
Thing is, it was as good as the dialogue from any of the previous episodes. Although the best dialogue probably comes from um, Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, because they had Lawrence Kasdan as the writer, and he's one of the all-time great Hollywood screenwriters. And so he brought his tremendous skill with dialogue. And if you don't know who Lawrence Kasdan is, Larry Kasdan, yeah, KASD, and you should definitely check out some of his movies because he's a great writer and a great director. He also wrote Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, lots of other good movies. There's one he wrote called Grand Canyon. But in any case, uh, most Star Wars doesn't have particularly sparkling great dialogue. So I understand that people would say that, well, the dialogue isn't good. But the dialogue wasn't really good in any of them, and people still watched because the dialogue got the job done. It wasn't doing a great job, but in that sense, it was good dialogue because everybody understood what was going on. Nobody had problems with not being able to understand who was who and what they were doing. So, in that sense, the dialogue actually is really effective because it gets the job done in telling the story. It's just clumsy.
Fair enough. But I think upon reflection that one of the things that makes people intrigued by the intrigue, for lack of a better word, of Andor, and not as much in Star Wars, is that it's set up a little better in Andor, and it's also spoken by the characters and the great acting. I mean, it's not like
Well, Andor has much better dialogue.
yeah.
Andor has better quality dialogue than almost any of the movies.
And so when you put into perspective all of the intensity that you feel, partly from Andor season one, and then as you watch Andor season two, I think that the stakes become a little higher. I think it also might just be that it's not as fair because we have a Galactic Empire in full force in Andor season two, but in episodes one, two, and three, it's sort of this nebulous growth that you're like, oh, well, like we don't have the Empire, it's the Republic. Everyone's sort of hunky dory right now, but we can tell that the seeds are being planted of the Sith, and they're slowly taking over, right? And so I think if you felt like, oh, I'm not a fan of the bureaucracy of episode 1, 2, and 3. Um, I think that you'll be proven wrong that wait, that's not why you didn't like episodes 1, 2, and 3 because if you didn't like episodes 1, 2, and 3, I think you would really like Andor because it's a fresh take on it and it also has a little bit of dialogue and it's a different type of bureaucracy that's going on, right? It's not necessarily bureaucracy of democracy that's slowly falling. It's the bureaucracy of democracy that has fallen. So that might be the factors that I'm thinking of. But I'm curious what you guys in the comments think. Maybe you guys have a different thought or perspective on that differential there. But we can certainly say that Andor was great. You could argue that episodes one, two, and three were great in their own ways, but I think Andor does some things differently that were good choices.
Yes, well, and this kind of goes with TV. TV tends to be more dialogue driven than movies. Not in all cases, but that's something that's, see, dialogue in general is relatively simple to photograph and edit. Not always, but in general. Two people sitting in a room and talking is easier to photograph and edit than a giant battle in space.
Yes, yes, absolutely. The technology that we have available nowadays is crazy compared to what it was 20 years ago, for sure. Um,
But
so,
it's still
yeah,
easier to do two people talking than
yeah.
spaceships fighting. So
Yeah. I mean, I think season 2 is was really strong. And sadly, it's a conclusion. That we won't be getting a season 3 anytime soon. We might see these characters once again that we've seen, but as far as the actual TV series, this is the conclusion. But boy, was it a wonderful, beautiful, um, uh, just
yeah, well,
complete package.
yes, it is a complete package, yet they also made it respectful and it dovetails nicely with A New Hope and
Yes.
with um, Rogue One. So that was that was skillfully done, where you don't feel like this is the end of a series, but more like the beginning of where the other movies and shows take off.
I would also say that this really feels like Star Wars. And I'm sorry to say this if you're a fan of every single possible Star Wars IP that exists out there. But, I mean, we have to be honest here at all the shows. And, there are some Star Wars IPs, we don't have to get into it, but there are some that just don't feel like Star Wars. But this does. If you feel immersed, you feel like you're in a galaxy far, far away. And even though we don't see all the known characters that we know from the sequels and the prequel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and the Star Wars Clone Wars animated show, we don't see all of these familiar characters or the main ones, but it certainly does feel like if they did show up, they would feel right at home. So, I would
Yes, that's,
recommend people see this.
and for me, I really loved The Mandalorian, and I'm looking forward to the Mandalorian movie. But that actually only felt like Star Wars occasionally. It was set in the Star Wars universe, but it was definitely focusing on different kind of characters and different kind of world, and it was not like the other Star Wars shows. So you can have a Star Wars show that doesn't feel like the Star Wars movies. Uh, also, there was let's see, I'm looking here and I'm not seeing it. Uh, the Star Wars series that came out this year that starred Jude Law. Why am I not
Oh,
seeing that?
Acolyte? Is that possibly what you're referring to?
Was that? I think the Acolyte is a different one.
Jude Law. Hmm.
Yeah,
Um.
Jude Law is not in this one. It was more for.
Oh, Skeleton Crew. Skeleton Crew.
Oh, was that Skeleton Crew?
Yes.
For some reason I thought Skeleton Crew was animated, but yes, Skeleton Crew also felt a lot like Star Wars. Although parts of it uh, were not, it didn't stay just in that fantasy Star Wars kind of vibe uh, all the time. And neither does Andor, but I'd say that those were the ones that felt most like Star Wars to me amongst the TV shows was Andor, Skeleton Crew, and maybe Obi-Wan Kenobi.
What you might be confusing with Skeleton Crew is the Bad Batch.
Oh, Bad
Um,
Batch.
Bad Batch is kind of similar in theme to Skeleton Crew ish. I
Yes.
must be candid with you, the audience. I haven't seen Bad Batch or Skeleton Crew, so you got to forgive
Skeleton
me.
Crew
But
is good. I watched all the episodes and I wanted to see each one. It definitely kept the momentum going. So now I've liked other Star Wars TV shows, but there's been at least like 10 animated and live action Star Wars TV shows. I don't know, maybe 15. And Andor's, especially season 2, is one of them that really feels like it's part of that same saga, that same storytelling as you get in the theatrical movies. And it really looks like them too. I mean, it looks and sounds and feels so much like Star Wars that it's really super impressive that they were able to do that for a TV show. And
Indeed.
it definitely has uh, characters that I think could work in the theatrical universe, like Luthen Rail. You know, I don't think I'm giving away too much by saying that he is one of the masterminds of the rebellion.
Yeah,
And
that
his,
was explained in Rogue One, and yeah.
yeah, he definitely could be a character along with the other main Star Wars characters, and he would fit in that group.
So let me ask you this though. Every time we talk about the IPs that we know and love, we always get, and you talked about the Emmys a little bit, but we always get critics that say, "Oh, you have to judge it by its own. You can't use other stuff to base your opinion on it. You have to rate it in isolation." And I think there's some truth to that. But let's just say for the sake of argument, that there was somebody out there in the universe, which they exist. Believe it or not, there are people who don't know what Star Wars is. There are people who don't know what a lightsaber is or what the Force is and all that stuff. So, but I mean, if you were to talk to that person wherever they are in some uh, you know uh, you know 8 by 10 white box and they don't know what's going on with Star Wars, would you recommend that they see Andor?
Yes, I think that overall, the show stands on its own, and it definitely helps to know something about Star Wars. But you don't have to watch any specific episodes, or at least I don't think you have to, have recently watched, Star Wars uh, episode 9, or have seen The Mandalorian, or any other show to appreciate this one. But it would help. And the reason it helps is because it's hard to say how much shorthand that they're using. In other words, if they're flying a Star Wars spaceship, we have certain expectations about how the Star Wars spaceships are going to be. And I'm not sure if that might be a little bit confusing if you had never been on a Star Wars spaceship before. But I think it would be fine. I really do. And most of the characters are not recurring characters from the theatrical series. So if you had never seen a Star Wars movie, you'd be fine for the most part, 90% of the time. These are characters that were introduced in this series. So you don't need to go anyplace else to know about those characters. They're explained beginning to end in this show.
Yeah, I mean, what I love so much about Andor is how expansive it is, exploring so many different parts of the galaxy and so many perspectives. So, I mean, this is just a breath of fresh air for fans of the Star Wars series. But I think, obviously, the original trilogy is the goat. It is the greatest. It's not just good as far as Star Wars, introduction, but also just as far as like movies. I think Star Wars Episode 4, 5, 6. If you haven't seen it, probably should. But
Yes,
if
the
I were,
history of everything.
but if for whatever reason you're like, I don't want to, watch those movies. I think they're too over bloated or overstated or older. They're older, right? Maybe the new generation, that Andor would be a great one to be like, well, look at this new advanced technology that they have now with all the, um, special effects and, these cool actors from nowadays. Like, maybe this new generation that doesn't know about Star Wars might relate to it more. Well, although I wouldn't recommend kids see this one for obvious reasons. But there are some people that didn't grow up with Star Wars, so this would be a close second to the trilogy, I would say, and or season 1 and 2.
Yes, they're a good introduction to Star Wars expanded universe where it's not about Luke and Yoda and Obi-Wan, but it's still in that Star Wars universe, which has gotten, you know, to be huge because there's been books and animated shows and video games and novels and comic books and so the Star Wars universe is quite huge and uh, people don't necessarily know about that because people tend to be fans of one part of it more than others. Like some people might like the movies and the books, or some people might like the TV shows and the video games, but I think Andor, especially season two, would appeal to anyone who has liked something Star Wars. And if you haven't seen Star Wars before, then I think this actually might be a pretty decent introduction to Star Wars because it's kind of a sci-fi thriller that's as much about the spying as it is about the science fiction. And there really isn't much of the force magic in this one, although there is some.
Yes, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But we are definitely in agreement here, guys. Go see this one. It's really a good piece to add to the Star Wars expanded universe collection. It's one of the best TV shows right now, and it's up for Emmys right now. So
Multiple,
possibly it could win awards, and you can
including
be able to
best
say
drama.
yeah, which is,
It's hard
not
to
something
get a nomination for best drama unless you're at least pretty good.
which I did not expect any Star Wars IP to be nominated for the Emmys, let alone Best Drama. Usually Star Wars, is kind of treated like Marvel, where it's kind of like, that's where the fans go, the Comic Con goers. They're in this Star Wars, and Comic Con people are over there, and the Emmy critics and the Oscar critics are over here. The actual quote unquote, and never the two shall they meet. But who knows? They might win drama here just because of how compelling the narrative here is of Andor, independent of the Star Wars, implications and the galactic universe that exists and all the cool sci-fi things attached to it. I think it's just a cool story that could be told in using real world technology, not necessarily needing sci-fi or fantasy stuff. So, guys, go see it. We really are hoping that you go and show its support. Now, uh, of course, we must do what we do with every show, which is without further ado, let's get into
The spoiler
this.
section.
Yes. And so that's where the dramatic music goes. And that'll be the recurring theme here. Be careful, tread lightly, close your ears temporarily, and skip forward on the timestamps wherever you're getting your all the show's information from. And so here we are. We're going to talk about Andor. So we're not going to go into every episode, obviously, and we're not going to go into like the nitty gritty. We're just going to give you the our specific thoughts on plot lines that we don't want everyone in the world to necessarily be spoiled by before they go and see it. So um let's start with the I guess Cassian plot line and how that develops, your thoughts on that, because I know you said that that was your favorite part of season 1, but now it's got its conclusion, or somewhat conclusion here, obviously, because the real conclusion is Rogue One, a Star Wars story. But yeah, your thoughts on Cassian in season 2.
Well, he's a really interesting character, and Diego Luna is a very successful actor, but I honestly have very little familiarity with most of his work. In other words, and even though they made him the star of the series and all, I really haven't seen most of the things that he's done. I mean, he was in a movie called Elysium that I saw. We had a small role in that, and he was, of course, in Rogue One, and I mean, he was in like DC League of Super Pets. I mean, I haven't seen that animated show, and uh,
Yeah.
so I don't know a lot about him, but he definitely did a really good job of playing a character that was first he was more of like a small-time thief. Then he was like, well, okay, I hate the Empire, so I'm gonna uh, try and do the Empire some damage, but I'm definitely not part of your revolution.
Yes,
To
very Han Solo-esque, right?
right, exactly, and finally he realizes that this is the cause of good, and he has to be part of it because uh, there is no other choice. It's either uh, destruction and tyranny or the rebellion. So so I liked him. I also really liked uh, the Mon Mothma character. Portrayed by Genevieve O'Reilly. And apparently, Mon Mothma is a character that's been around for quite a while, but I didn't realize that that the character had been uh, around because she was in like novels or comics, and and games. And the same actress had voiced this character in the games and the animated versions too. But I hadn't seen those before. So so this is my first introduction to her, and I thought she was really well done, playing this uh, gracious, dignified, really, uh, trying to do a good job, senator, and her having to deal with understanding that, oh, wait a minute, everything that we're doing here is actually just a plot on the part of the emperor to deceive everybody, and that, now she has to speak out that things are much more serious than she thought. And
Yeah, she sort of represents a part of the empire that thought, well, as long as we as individuals maintain our common good and decency and try and advocate for that, without having to get involved with the rebels directly, we should be okay. Like, work within the system. But soon she realizes that basically the empire works very diligently to um, isolate Mon Mothma and sort of her driver is a spy. We learned that there are other senators that are like that used to be on her side and then slowly get convinced to be on the side of the emperor, sort of deceived, and so it's also a story about her having to come to terms with not just being uh, there's a term in Godfather, a wartime. They go to a lawyer who's a more peaceful guy, doesn't want to hurt people, and he goes, Hagen, you're not a wartime consigliere, and so Mon Mothma is not really necessarily initially a wartime leader, but she develops that over time and becomes very adept at both diplomacy, but also realizing that the empire is brutal. Like, you have to accept that you need to be more resistant than simply using your words. And she very clearly is, kind of on the other side of the coin because Cassian is wanting to stay out of the conflict. and the politics of it. And so that's why he stays away from Luthen. But the reason Mon Mothma stays away from Luthen is because he thinks he's too ruthless. He thinks that, or she thinks that he is too far away from sort of common decency. But soon she realizes that the only way to preserve democracy is to fight for it. So, and she does that very well in this movie. Very great character development.
Yes, and I also have to give a special call out to Alan Tudyk as
Yep.
the voice of K2SO, a enforcer droid who changes sides. And uh, he's very funny and makes perfect sense as a character. I mean, it's hard to be funny and an action hero at the same time, and he does that.
Yeah, we were really missing comedy relief throughout this series. I would say that was one of the weaker points of the whole, both season one and season two. Is obviously this is a bad time for the galaxy. The Empire is winning. Fascism is on the rise. So doing comedic relief is in some ways inappropriate for the themes that they're trying to show you. But man, it was sorely needed at the end there, and it came at a great time. But yeah, most of it did not include a comedic relief like that, like that, and so yeah. But I agree, definitely, those are my characters. But, I'm gonna go. It may seem contrarian, but I actually think that some in the audience will actually agree with me that I liked Cyril and oh my gosh, I'm blanking on their name now. Deba. I'm gonna Deidre. Sorry, Deidre, Mira, and Cyril
Yes,
Khan, the bad guys side. So, as we talked about, referenced a little bit in the spoiler-free section, um, we talked about there's a character that thought they were the good guys, but then slowly it unravels that, wait a minute, are we the baddies? Are we the bad guys? Well, to make a long story short, Cyril was a corporate guard who was, trying to do good by his fellow corporate guards. He kind of developed a relationship with them, and then they get killed. And happened to be killed by Cassian Andor. So this whole time, this whole series, this is about redemption for justice for those two corporate guards, and he spends years trying to fascinate over who is Cassian Andor, how can we find him, and how can we defeat these rebel rousers from killing more innocent people. And eventually, he develops not just a professional relationship, but also a romantic one with a member of the Empire, and that is, of course, Deidre Miro. So Deidre Miro is a classic example of a uh, imperial officer that gets so attached to their sense of duty and their desire to um, uh, have career advancement, almost as a sense of survival, right? Because the more that they advance, the more protected they are from getting potentially ousted or killed by making a mistake. The higher up you get, the more protected you are. So, but what makes her character so fascinating is that she's in a male dominated field. Obviously, it's a whole, it's the scene every time you go to the ISB council chambers. It's like a sea of old white dudes and then this one white woman. And that's a big part of her character, is that she's able to sort of advance in this very competitive male dominated field. And she's clearly shown to be very knowledgeable, very capable, but obviously a fascist, and that's the thing we have to keep in mind as an audience member is, although we relate to the fact that, she's trying to break the glass ceiling, we got to keep in mind she's trying to break the glass ceiling of oppression. She's trying to say, hey, women can oppress too. And it's like, well, that's the problem, right? Of course, as audience members. But it's just so like, and there is this scene in season one that is just such a favorite scene of mine, where they're on Phoenix, I believe it's called, the planet that
yes.
Cassian Andor was raised on, and we see the first phases of the Empire stifling freedom, and basically long story short, they are trying to find Cassian. Cassian is on that planet, and there's this big battle that gets waged, and Cyril saves Deidre's life. And it's this culminating moment. And most audiences probably said, "Oh, dang it, she got saved." But I was like, yes, Cyril saved her life because I wasn't rooting for the Empire in that moment. I was rooting for Cyril and Deidre and the fact that they were together. And now we can see as an audience what's going to happen next. Obviously, I'm not rooting for them being successful as far as like finding Cassian. I'm more so rooting for the fact that um, Cyril comes from this humble beginning of like just some random corporate guard, and then he advances his way up, and we see that how that works. And Deidre also like is not as well respected as her peers, although she is taken a liking to by the major of the ISB, one of the heads of the ISB, and is
The
able to.
guy who's in charge there, Orson Krennic.
No, that's the guy who's actually doesn't like her. I believe his name is, oh goodness, Leo Partagaz. That's what it is. Leo Partagaz. What a interesting name there, huh? I try and say that 10 times fast. But yeah, so that guy is the basically the one rooting for her and is kind of again, fascist, but is sort of uh leading her with a gentle hand that this is how you have to this is how you will advance. And later on there's a line in season 2, one of my favorite lines. I'm blanking on how it goes exactly, but and he says, "Calm your emotional tempers with a wave of professional advancement." That basically, no, don't worry, you'll advance if you do this. So, seeing that on the other side, like we've seen the good guys all this time, and this is one of the few times in the Star Wars universe where we see the other side. And yeah, there's just so much I could get into that make me empathize with those two characters. But yeah, and then seeing their tragic end was like even more impactful because you're like, dang, what a way
Yes.
for them to go out, right?
Well, this was definitely the most that we've seen of how the empire actually works. In other words, they did a really good job of visualizing and then casting and then writing for the people who actually make the empire work for the emperor.
And one of the most important things that Andor the series tells
And
you
it's actually
is that
scary. It sounds like
yes,
it's bureaucratic, but it's actually really scary because the reason that the emperor can do so many horrible, scary things isn't really because of his force lightning power. Okay, that's like what he saves when things aren't going well, and he has to like personally use the supreme power of the dark side to try and get things back the way he wants them. Most of what the does that's horrible is being done through all of these people that work for the Empire.
yeah, and I was gonna say that um, I think also barely enough. I think it was intentionally this way, but in 4, 5, and 6, what's the common thing we say? Oh, the stormtrooper aim. Oh man, the stormtroopers suck. Man, the Empire is so incompetent. How do they let these ragtag band of rebels loose to them? Well, as we come to find out in Andor season 2, some of these plans were allowed by the Empire. This is by design. And remember, infamously, what does Admiral Akbar say? It's a trap, right? So what the Empire does so well also is through that bureaucracy they gain a ton of intelligence and information. And so you think that the rebels are sort of getting away with these plans, but really it's risks being taken by the Imperial Security Bureau, the ISB. It's risks being taken by them to say, okay, we recognize we can't control every single aspect of the Empire. So what we'll do is, what we saw in Gorman, will allow the Gormans to do an act of rebellion and we'll use that to create a flashpoint incident, a false flag attack that will give us more authority, give us more dictatorial powers. That's the
It's
playbook of a
almost
lot of
really
dictators.
the emperor that's figuring this out. I mean, that was actually one of the most fascinating things that I liked about the prequel trilogy is
Yes.
how the emperor really was this mastermind, and that it wasn't just that he was going to try and flatten everyone with the power of the force. It was more about his sneaky plan that he was going to create a war. And in this war, he was actually the commander of both sides. So
The
that way,
most yeah,
no
the
matter
most
who
evil and
won, he
beautiful
wins.
plan. Exactly. The most a magnum opus in intelligence and subterfuge and spycraft was the galactic war, or the clone wars, sorry. The galactic war was between the clone wars was like a masterclass in spycraft because he controlled both sides. So he could control what intelligence was um, valued by the people or not seen by the people and all that stuff. So I mean, I thought it was genius that they brought a guy like Tony Gilroy to do this because that is what allowed the Empire to be as successful as it is. And this is very true to life as well. I don't want to get too much into the politics of the real world, but we know that people use incidents that happen that are truthful that do happen, but they're not telling you the whole truth. And that's what happens in my favorite episode of the series. I think actually better than season 1 episode 6. I think Andor season 2 episode 8, Who Are You? Which is this
Yes.
culminating scene where so many plot points hit their climax. And it's where Cyril has this really powerful moment because this is where the Gormans basically they're trying to do a peaceful protest against the Empire and the Empire trying to harvest their resources and suppress their free speech and all this stuff. And there's this big battle. But what happens that really makes you realize how powerful the Empire is what the Empire does is they do two things. Number one, they send inexperienced troopers who don't know what they're doing to act as crowd control for the peaceful protests. So everyone in the Empire who's at middle of management knows that that's a big mistake. But that's not a mistake. That's a plan. That was their intention, was to send inexperienced people who don't know how to handle intense crowds like this to try and do that. And that was piece number one. Obviously, there's a thousand other pieces that the Empire set up here, but that was major piece number one. But number two was they send a sniper, and that sniper goes in and shoots one of their own, shoots one of the other troopers on the ground. And so what happens? Chaos. Oh my gosh, everyone's, fearing
Yeah,
for
they
their lives.
blame the other side.
And so, once again, a beautiful connection to the Clone Wars and what the Emperor does so skillfully. Set up a false flag attack that makes everyone think, oh man, the Gormans are getting violent. Oh, we got to cramp down on them, right? We got to give the Empire even more executive power. But actually, it was a plan. But what happens after that? Um, Cyril, who had been under the impression the whole time that they were doing the right thing, realizes that the Empire was the one at fault. The Empire made this plan to kill their own. And he says, "Well, I thought the point was to save lives. I'm with the fascism part, but I thought that fascism was to protect people. But now, and there's this wonderful scene where he's looking out in this crowd and his eyes are lost. He doesn't know who he is or what's going on at this moment. And it's this epic battle going on, and you see Cyril contemplating. And remember, the way that empires have fallen is not from the outside, but from the inside, from within, many times. Obviously, every part is important, but we know what Darth Vader does to the Emperor. We know that really it takes everyone, including the bad guys, turning good. And so Cyril was just on the cusp of that. But then he sees Cassian Andor and they get into a fight, and it's just a whole awesome thing. I encourage everyone, to rewatch that. A lot of things you can pick from that episode, but that was my favorite episode for sure. Was Who We Are, or Who Are You?
Yes, that was kind of my favorite episode too. And that dramatic scene was one of several dramatic confrontations that happen. Some that are just character dialogue, and others that have uh, elaborate fight scenes that are staged in these futuristic alien-looking buildings with all kinds of technology, and it has this very gritty, like hand operated camera running through the war zone feel to it. And then, there's the Imperial Chambers. It has all these different locations that you can travel from seamlessly. And it's just very exciting, very like dazzling episode that more like something you'd expect to see in a big movie than in a television episode. So they really like opened up the possibility of what you could do with a TV show, a little bit like that Shogun TV series. I don't know if anybody's
Oh, I haven't seen that
seen
one.
that, but that's one where they kind of create. Japan from the Middle Ages, and they do a story that's set in that world, an action adventure story that's set in that world, and they kind of do that here, where they're creating this whole world that's really big and detailed, and the characters get to explore around in it, and the audience gets to be familiar with it. And yeah, you are rooting for those characters, and at the end, you feel a little bit sad that these people aren't actually going to make it. But that's part of Star Wars, right? Like in the
Yep.
first half hour of the first episode, they blow up a whole planet.
This is war. That's what happens in a war, right? And we can blame the emperor for being so evil and causing all this strife. So, what was your favorite episode, or
Well, it
maybe
was
just part?
episode 8 of season 2, I think was my favorite if I had to pick one, but I liked several of the episodes. There really were bad ones. I mean, like episode 5, I Have Friends Everywhere. That was a really cool one. And that one was a little bit more about the organization and the spycraft and the thriller elements, getting into how all of that works. And the tension and the suspense and all that was really good in that episode, and that's something that you get more of this than in the Star Wars movies, is that there's more of that suspense and thriller element.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. There's one other thing that I thought was so amazing about this episode is just going back to like the setup of this is that at first, one of the cool things that the I think it's called the Gorman Front, the resistance movement in that planet, they capture a weapons shipment, and you're like, oh wow, what a great success! But then we realize this was the evil plan all along. They needed to arm the resistance without the resistance knowing that they were being led into basically a trap or a line of deception. The Empire couldn't just go directly to them and say, "Here you go. Here's some weapons." They had to make them think to believe that they were fighting on their own. And so, this fight couldn't have become as bloody as it was without the partisans having, or the resistance rebels having weapons to do that. So that was just another like just such a evil, like, oh my gosh, wow, the empire's so daunting that even when the good guys are winning they're still kind of losing in a way. But yeah, just yeah, a really epic episode. And also let's talk about the design, because I mean, what a beautiful just like so encapsulating how it was all set up. You know, the clothing that everyone was wearing, all the civilians, and the building architecture, and that's true for everywhere that they go. You know, you really feel transported to these universes, these planets when you go. They wear different clothing, they look differently, the atmosphere is different, and that's very true with this planet as well. So kudos to the design team, the costume design and the set design team on this. Just did a class job.
Yes, and they also, got inspiration and borrowed things from other sci-fi shows. For example, one of the locations that they used repeatedly for different things was a actual real-world place called the City of Arts and Sciences in Spain. And the first show that used that I'm aware of was Westworld. So I could see some of the same locations that they had redressed. That is, they added additional sets and props to change the look of it, but you could tell that it was that same city that's very futuristic and has this amazing real world design. And it's worth checking that out. The City of Arts and Sciences because it looks cool in real life. It doesn't have to, be in a movie uh, to look really cool. And
Yeah,
uh, so they definitely did a lot of building amazing sets, but they also traveled to a lot of different locations, and that can really, uh, add to the production value. The quality of everything is when you go outside of the studio and find really cool things in the real world.
absolutely. And there is one thing I want to mention in the inside baseball section that goes to what you said, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, and so just everything running on all cylinders very well. There's a scene I thought I saw though. That I wanted to get your thoughts on, your interpretation. And It was the scene where everything comes crumbling down, and the intelligence, everything that uh, we had been building up for hits its climax once again. And it's the scene where Orson Krennic interrogates Deidre, and brings her into that room. I don't know if you remember the scene, but
Oh,
Krennic,
sure. That was a real intense scene. And
yeah. But, she is in trouble because she got overzealous. She is looking too much into the rebels and what they're getting up to. And she kind of gets blamed for some of the things that go wrong, for, as Director Krennic calls it, scavenging. She's scavenging the files, and she scavenges a little too far, and she finds out about the Death Star, which without her realizing, results in the rebels finding out about the Death Star. Um, but um, uh, Krennic has this real intense scene with her interrogating her about what she does and doesn't know. Um, and uh, my interpretation of that scene is that um, Krennic knows that if somebody else doesn't get blamed for this, that he will get blamed for this. So he needs to
he
find
does
a
end up getting
scapegoat.
blamed anyway.
Yes, yes. What does Grand Moff Tarkin say? Failure to find a plan in a timely manner will find you in front of a less patient audience.
Mhm.
And of course, meaning Darth Vader, who we never see. We never see the Emperor, but we know what will happen if you do. So I don't think that that scene is Orson Krennic actually getting mad at Deidre. I think that scene is him basically um toying with Deidre. And we know this because he turned off all the surveillance just before he walked in. All the monitoring equipment, he turns that all off. And he's basically telling her that, hey, I understand you're a valuable asset, but I need to know what you know so I can get ahead of it and I can throw you under the bus. And so this is not about her being incompetent. This is about him saving his own skin, right?
And we see that happening in other situations where basically the way the empire works is that you have to have somebody to blame if things go wrong. And so,
Exactly.
uh, having that lack of integrity, uh, it turns out to be one of their weaknesses. But it's okay because the way it actually turns out is that, I mean, the way that the story has evolved is thanks to Rogue One. We know that the reason why the assault on the Death Star worked is because there was a flaw built into the Death Star by one of the members of the Emperor's team who had kind of had enough. And so he
Yes.
quickly created a flaw that nobody knew about and that would kind of pass muster on inspections, that it didn't seem like it was a flaw. And so the emperor's plan to um, blame the uprising on the Gormans so he could invade Gorman and get what he wanted there actually turned out to be the way that he brought about his own destruction.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways that it happened, but I remember us talking about that. Remember way back
And
when,
it was the emperor at that time who wasn't thinking far enough ahead and wasn't planning. Yes, he had all this big, complicated, devious, brilliant plan, but he forgot something really important because it just didn't seem important to him at the time.
yeah, yeah. I mean, ISB the whole time. Remember, they were not told why they needed to collect the resources on Gorman. They were just told, we're going to have some problems on Gorman because we need this stuff. You need to figure it out. Remember that big meeting that they had with the very, Bond villain esque meeting where they're on this mountainous planet and they're like, ah, yes, we will plan the demise of the Gormans. So, but they don't mention why. And it's not until it's too late that they learn, oh, we're trying to build a Death Star. Okay, that might have been useful information at the time. Then we would have probably been able to, plan ahead for that. But that was their undoing, is their deviousness, their sinister
Oh, as the
schemes.
emperor. And I'm not sure how much they consciously thought about this, but that's kind of the way it works out. That it turns out that one of the major factors in why the empire fell and why Palpatine was defeated was because his own plan failed in a way that never occurred to him. He thought that he
Yep.
was creating a plan to destroy others, and it turned out that it was actually a plan that ended up destroying him.
Yeah. So the other that reminds me actually. There's another thing that was kind of controversial about the Andor series as a whole, and we touched about this, touched on it a little bit, but the lack of Sith and Jedi battles, the lack of lightsabers, Force powers, all that stuff is uh, basically a distant memory here, and is even commented upon by Cassian. Very similar to Han Solo, where it's like it's a superstitious thing. What are you doing talking about the Force? Um, but it does get its praise once, pretty importantly. But how did you feel about them not talking about Jedi or Sith? Did you think that was, a good thing, a bad thing, or didn't really affect you?
Well, I knew that was going to be kind of the basic rules of this version of the Star Wars universe, that there was going to be very little use of the Force because That was the way Rogue One was, and Tony Gilroy said that in interviews before the first episodes of the first season came out. So knowing that going in, it was easier for me to accept it. However, I think that one of the two or three basic defining qualities of Star Wars is the use of the Force. Another one is the epic romantic music, and which they have in this episode, and I mean the series. And then another one is that there has to be like a there has to be levels to everything, right? Where
Yeah.
you may just be or think that you're just growing up on a farm on this obscure planet, but actually you're going to be a key piece in this giant galactic revolution.
Yeah. I can understand what you're saying. I guess it's just a
And they
little
do have that
disappointing.
key piece element, and uh, they had science fiction elements, and but the fact that they had so little force is probably the thing that makes it least like Star Wars for me, is that because for me
Yeah.
that's a critical element. So it did feel like Star Wars, and they did the best that they could, which was really a good job. They could do really well without having to use the Force much. But as soon as the Force gets used in one of the episodes, that just makes the whole thing click for me and work so much better because, oh, there's the Force. That means it's Star Wars.
Yeah, and it didn't get used spectacularly either. It was force healing, a very rare form of force powers because it's so powerful, obviously. And but it was done to great effect, and I'm glad that they included some reference. But I guess it's just when you watch episode 4. I mean, what is the key moment that helps them defeat the Great Death Star? Use the Force, Luke, right? And it just it feels wrong to watch a Star Wars Rebels themed show without a major piece of their effort being based around, well, we're kind of screwed here, but we do have the Force. That I understand that causes limitations writing wise to have the Force, but I just wish that there were references to it more frequently than we got. That's one thing that I wish to make it more Star Wars, but that doesn't make this a bad show. I just want to make that 100% clear. Like, this is definitely does feel like Star Wars. That's the part that doesn't make it a 10 out of 10 for me. That's the part that doesn't get me over the hump, but I still was engaged the whole time.
Yes, I was engaged the whole time, and it was interesting and it was exciting, unexpected, lots of cool characters doing fun things. And uh, like I said, there was scenes where like there's a banquet where just the decor of the banquet is absolutely stunning, and
Yeah.
you can just enjoy it because it's beautiful and shiny and has all these moving parts, and uh, it doesn't have to be a spaceship. It's just a futuristic looking ballroom that's completely decked out, and so I was entertained by that. uh, so as an alternative to using the Force, they used other things that worked for me.
They had hope as a major defining characteristic for them, and I think that carried the day. They had that persistent positive outlook. Even if they were pessimistic about human behavior, they still, really kept trying to fight for what's right and sacrifice a lot. Even if they knew what they were fighting against was this big giant behemoth, and it might be a losing cause, or may even cause them to lose their own lives. They all found a way to persevere and let hope win the day. So that's, I think, what led me to be okay with the lack of use of force. And so yeah, overall good show. Let's get into, so now I think, is there anything else you wanted to cover in spoilers before we get into the final verdict?
Yeah, we can get into the final verdict. And there's one more thing that I'm going to bring up, but it's not a spoiler.
Oh, okay, great. So now we have concluded the spoiler section. We had a lot of fun things we got to talk about, but now we've reached our final verdict. And I would say that my favorite episode was definitely a 10 out of 10, but the overall series would be a 9 out of 10 for me. I think that there's just so many great moments, memorable moments, and this feels like Star Wars. Everything's going well in this show. um, there are ways that it can improve, though. It didn't have as much use of Jedi versus Sith. It didn't have as much use of Force, and the music wasn't as connected to John Williams as I had wished. And there's a couple other little nitpicky things, but that's why I'm not at a 10 out of 10. But man, that episode, season 2, episode 8, was fantastic, amazing, one of my favorite TV show episodes of all time. But and yeah, this show is definitely one of my favorite shows of all time as well. So definitely go out and see it.
Yes. Well, I would give it overall an 8 out of 10. And I would say that of TV shows for this, the 24-25 season, I would give it a 9 out of 10. Or maybe even
Yep.
a 10 out of 10. I mean, it definitely is worthy of being nominated for a Best Drama Award because it's really that well done. Uh, in addition to all the sci-fi fantasy costumes and all the lore and all that stuff, it's just a really good story, and it amazingly well um, resonates with things that you may have seen or heard about in our real world. They definitely have resonance with things that happen in our real world without directly commenting or being influenced by anything that's happening in our real world. It's just about
Yes.
things that have happened in history that are important, and the people writing it understand about history and about how spies might work in the real world and all that. Because I mean, this is the guy who did the Born Identity, where it's super based in real world and real politics. So,
Yes. And the bad guys are not comically bad either. They are humanly bad.
oh yes,
Um,
yes, yes. That's
right.
another
So
big difference is that the stormtroopers are much more humanized, and so are their bosses. They're evil, but they're not just evil. There's time to explore that these are actually people who are, some of them are actually evil through and through, and some of them are just part-time evil, which is how most evil actually survives, is that it's all the part-time evil people that support them that give them most of their influence. And this is a real good study in that. And then what happens that, you might think that siding with the evil people is the smart thing to do, but in the end, it turns out that no, actually, it's not.
yep, yep. And some learn in more devastating ways than others. So you heard it here at all the shows. We love Andor, and we hope that you'll love it too. So be sure to go check it out, and watch it with a friend as well. I know we usually like to say go see it in the theater, but you can't do that with this one. So watch it with other people, possibly. There are ways that you can stream it, and do like sharing your screen and dual screen sharing on different platforms, and watch it together with other folks, because that's the way that these stories survive and live on, is you telling them and talking about it with other people. So we
Yeah.
hope that you'll go and you'll share your experiences with Andor with others, and continue on in this wonderful story of Star Wars.
Yes, and I'll mention one more quick side mission that while talking about all this Star Wars, I happened across a hilarious, really well done music video called "The Saga Continues" by none other than Weird Al. And Weird
Ah.
Al tells the Star Wars story, and again, he's very faithful to it, but he has his own twist on it that turns it into hilarious comedy.
Oh, I didn't even know he put one out, but that makes sense. In the season of sequels, of course, Weird Al has to jump on it and parody something. So that makes sense to me. Um, okay, so we've talked about Andor, but that was what was going on with the show. But now it's time for the segment that we all know, we all love, and my dad loves to call.
Inside baseball, or in this case, inside Andor. How did they do that? And we talked about that a little bit in the spoiler section, like a location at the City of Arts and Sciences in Valencia, Spain, where it's just looks like a futuristic city all by itself without having to do anything to it. And so, yeah, they went to some very interesting locations. And I find that's one of the things that I enjoy doing with a show that I like is seeing the locations. And some of them you can actually go visit yourself and you can stand in the same place that your favorite character stood when they said that favorite line of yours or did that thing that you thought was really awesome. So uh, the locations were great on it. And it was mostly filmed in England at Pinewood Studios, which are the studios where they shot basically all of these 9, 10 Star Wars movies, 11, maybe they're up to now. So that was another way that they were, being authentic behind the scenes is that they were using the same studios, the same sets, whenever they could, as the original Star Wars movies.
Okay, interesting.
Uh, let's see. Other things about it that are cool. Of course, it has a huge budget. They spent over $650 million on the 2 seasons, which, if you do the math, that works out to an average of like $30 million an episode. And that's for a 1 hour episode.
Sometimes less.
Yeah, sometimes the episodes are less. And of course, they don't divide the budget evenly in each episode. That's not the way showrunners do it. They look
Yeah.
ahead and they say, okay, uh, we're going to have a lot of visual effects in this episode, so we're going to have a lot of dialogue in that episode, and we'll design it so the dialogue is really intense and interesting, so that episode works and that will give us enough budget to do this spectacular special effects episode. So one of the reasons why the show looks spectacular is because they were using the same amount and same quality of visual effects that you would get in a feature film because they had the budget to do that. They had the equivalent of $100 million budget to do that episode that had all the visual effects.
Yeah.
And other
Um,
TV shows don't get to do that. Yes, they can have effects heavy shows, but the total budget still isn't enough to get it up into the feature film, elite level. But this series did.
Yeah, and we know there are plenty of examples. We don't have to get into it, but examples where a TV show tries to fit within their budget, but tries to do something visually that is not within their budget, but they're trying, and so but it takes you out of the scene. But never once was I taken out of the Andor slash Star Wars universe. I felt fully immersed every time I clicked on the next episode, and they really got their money worth.
Well, when the spaceships suddenly appear flying over the fields, it looks like a theatrical movie shot. It doesn't have those telltale little clues, like in the compositing or the level of detail of the spaceships, or differences in how the lighting works and different parts of the sky, because they're shot at different places. I mean, they although that's that kind of compositing, and you can see in behind the scenes footage, which I like recommend to people in general, that if you like visual effects, you can actually hunt on the interweb, actually just on the main internet, for the visual effects companies that did the shots, and they will have those visual effects shots broken down in detail on their website, because this is how they help get more work for their visual effects companies, is that they show the visual effects and they show the different steps that they went through to get that. So if you're a producer or a visual effects supervisor who's looking for a company, you can go to their site and look at their reel and go, oh, yes, we're wanting to do something like that. And that was very cool. It was very creative the way they built that shot up. Maybe they could do our shot. But
Yeah.
for entertainment value, it's terrific because you get to see, okay, this is what the actors saw, and then they put on a layer, and then they put on another layer, and then it's like magic. Suddenly, all these layers turn into this amazing scene.
Yeah. And so, to be clear to audiences out there, this show was not canceled because of the bloated budget or because they spent too much money and they had to cancel it. Although it may seem like that from afar, this was canceled because this is the vision Gilroy had. He saw it and completed it. And if you watch season two, you'll know exactly why this is a complete series. But even funny story that came out is that Ewan McGregor actually is as excited as fans about potentially seeing a season three. He was quoted as saying, "I got really excited. I was thinking I think I, as in Obi-Wan Kenobi, I think I'm in this timeline. I think I could be in season three." And I got super excited. And then I realized, oh no, there can't be a season three. So, even Ewan McGregor, who was not, sorry, spoilers, Obi-Wan does not show up in Andor. Uh, he wanted another season as well. So people love it. Audiences are loving it. And of course, critics are because it's getting nominated for all these Emmys. But it's just that they wanted to finish the story, and I think that's a good thing. I think that with all the sequels of things, sometimes you have to conclude a story, just end it, and
Yes.
and so it was good that they did that. Although, again, these other characters may show up later on. You never know.
Oh, and by the way, one of the main writers for this series, Andor, is a guy named Beau Willimon. And if that name rings a bell, it's because he was the creator and lead writer on House of Cards. So,
Ah, this is a perfect thing for him too. The very political intrigue. Yeah. Now, since you love to do insider baseball here, I thought I'd throw a pitch on the mound myself. I got an interesting one here. So, you may not have known this, Dad, but there are many astute Star Wars fans who noticed that the Mon Mothma Senate speech is different than the Mon Mothma speech they saw in Star Wars Rebels. And there's an interesting reason why. So, uh,
although same
entertainment
actor.
Yes, Entertainment Weekly notes that Star Wars fans may note that this speech diverged somewhat from the canon that was established in the animated series Star Wars Rebels. In season 3, episode Secret Cargo, Mon makes a speech broadcast across the galaxy from within a ship as she's transported to Yavin by Gold Squadron. But as the article goes on to detail, they writers wanted to make their own Mon Mothma speech. They didn't want to work within the confines of the speech they did in Star Wars Rebels. Um, so what they did was they said, okay, we're going to write two different speeches. The Mon Mothma speech we hear in Star Wars Rebels is her being transported. But the one we hear in Andor season 2 is her in the Senate chambers, in the Senate floor. So, uh, it's not that they're diverging from the canon, it's that they're getting creative and they're doing one speech here in this part of her escaping, and then another from a different part of her escaping. Um, So that's a little fun fact. So it's not a different. It's not different canon. It's just a different speech. The other is as we referenced a little bit earlier. Uh, the Star Wars creative team really likes to get into the minutia on things. So in the Mandalorian language was created by folks, and it took inspiration from Native American language that's in real life. But see if you can guess, Dad. What European language do you think that the Gorman language would be based off of, based on what you've seen from the design already and everything?
Uh, I'm not sure. I mean, conlangs, that's what these are called, constructed languages. Conlangs pick up influences from different places, so it doesn't sound too familiar. But it's important if you're going to make up a language that it sound foreign to everybody. So I don't know. I mean, maybe what they speak in Croatia. I don't know.
I was thinking like that, like maybe something like Polish. This seemed like very very Polish style, but actually it is Français. It is French. So the
Oh, yes, I remember hearing some French sounding syllables, but it wasn't enough for
yes.
me. I don't know French well enough. And like I say, the whole idea of a conlang is it's supposed to sound like a foreign language to everybody. And that's a much bigger challenge.
So the Conlang creator, Marina Tyndall, went and said that this Conlang of Gorman was loosely inspired by the inventory of terrestrial French. You might get a flicker of recognition, you catch a syllable that resembles a French syllable, but it's a false friend. So, I mean, the language of the Gormans is obviously, mostly going to be in and of itself, isolated from French, but they took inspiration from the French dialogue. And this did really feel like sort of the Nazi uprising and taking over of France and later Vichy France. I mean it. I mean, they looked like they were a sci-fi version of the 1940s. It felt like a European style, like sort of battle between fascism and democracy and that sort of thing. So I think it made perfect sense for them to do something very European there with French. So,
Yes.
in case you
But
were
it doesn't
wondering if it was familiar,
necessarily
yes.
sound European. I mean, also the actors and the accent that they created. It sounds like an alien Star Wars language, but it sounds enough like a real language that the actors are having a real conversation. You may not be able to understand every word, although they have every word spelled out for you in the subtitles. So if you like watching subtitles, that's something you have to be aware of, is that the episode has, in addition to the subtitles that you might have just to make sure you can understand all the dialogue, they also have subtitles built into it to translate the alien languages.
Indeed, indeed. Well, that about covers it, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to us. The last thing we've got for you is all the shout outs. Or you can shout out all the things you want. Go ahead. The floor is yours. Whatever you'd like the people to know about.
Uh, well, let's see. I have a concert that's coming up uh, on the 16th of November. If you happen to be in the Santa Monica area, it's going to be at Gateway Church. And let's see. Another shout out is well, I'm working on a new episode of Space Command, and uh, what else? I guess that's it for this week.
Well, with all the things you keep busy with, I'm sure there'll be even more to shout out in the future as well.
Yeah, I was
I'm
really
just
sorry about this. That's all right.
I'm gonna keep it short and sweet. I'm going to shout out you, the audience, at all the shows. Thank you so much for tuning in. We're a humble little boutique here, and we're grateful to all of you who are showing up and subscribing and listening. And if you'd like to have an even more interpersonal relationship with us, at all the shows, feel free to email us your comments, questions, or concerns at alltheshows010 at gmail.com, and we will read your comments to us live on air.
Yes.
So
We want to know if you like what you're seeing and you want to see more of it, or if you want something different, or if you just have a comment. We love to hear from you because you're who we do the show for, every one of you.
Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it. We don't have an outro yet. We'll see you in 2 weeks. So for now, see you next time. Take care.
Bye.